Hello friends, today is an unusual video. Recently I got a comment on one of my videos suggesting that I make independent videos for each of my genetic analysis packages, and I thought this was a great idea. And basically the commenter said that it would be useful to describe how these genetic analysis packages could be useful in or functional in someone altering their lifestyle or their health to lead to actual benefits. So I'll start today with the first one on my genetic analysis packages. You can find this on my website, leoandlongevity.com. There's a section called genetic analysis. If you click it, you'll see the different packages. Now, originally I used to offer a large genetic analysis, just one product, but it took me so much time that it was very expensive. And there are some people that want they're interested in specific elements of health as opposed to their entire genome. So originally I started with just separating out cognitive genes that affect cognitive performance and well-being and stuff like that, stuff that affects the brain. And then later I decided to split up the entire package because it was also getting honestly really tiring for me, because the packages were like 80 pages or 90 pages or so, or 60 to 90 pages depending on the person, and taking over 20 hours of my time. And for some reason I find it much easier to do this when I'm not doing just one person's genome. So if I do one person's cardiovascular health and then another person's metabolic health, I find this entertaining even if I go back and forth. And so today I'm going to talk about the first package, which is called the longevity and methylation package. What I want to tell you guys about is what this entails, as well as why I think it's beneficial. So first of all, let's talk about longevity. So basically the longevity, by the way, this is one of my shortest packages, and the reason why it's priced lower as well. The longevity package is well, it's a package together, but the longevity section includes the single nucleotide polymorphisms that are most strongly correlated with exceptionally long life. So some of these are very well known, like FOXO3A, but not all of them are very well known. I look at these individual longevity polymorphisms that I have gleaned through years of following the research on this subject, and directly from papers. By the way, I'm not aware if any of the other genetic analysis. So most of the other companies, what they do is you just put in your raw data on the website, and they run your raw data through a program and give the results to you. Many of these ones, like for example, when I was talking with Tony Hughes, he showed me the results he got before he did my analysis. And many of these guys don't even mention the SNP, they mention the gene in general. So some genes have a couple of SNPs that are important. I provide all of the information in detail. So the exact SNP, you can go through the research yourself, find out the details. But what I do is, I don't know if there are any of these guys that do this for longevity. I don't know if they have like a program for longevity. They do have some for cardiovascular health and things like that. But I don't know if anyone does for longevity. But I've taken my SNPs directly from the research. So over time, I've noticed several SNPs that are directly correlated to. Now, of course, you could think of it this way: anything that affects cancer or cardiovascular disease, for example, or even autoimmune diseases, will affect longevity. But I'm talking about, in this section, I go to the SNPs that have such a profound effect that just that one single nucleotide polymorphism, if you have the right alleles, is associated with exceptionally long life. So there's about, I don't know how many of them there are exactly, about 10 of them or so. And I've done this for a lot of people so far. So I've seen a lot of, probably I have a unique perspective, because I've seen a lot of people's polymorphisms at these longevity SNPs. And really what this is about is not just the polymorphisms, which then you can research and take make use of, but really my editorial. I provide for both sections. Now in this report there's a methylation section and a longevity section. I provide my own perspective on grouping them together. What are your main, do you have a chance to have exceptional longevity? Do you not? How important, like specifically in regard to longevity, most of these things have to do with either reverse cholesterol transport or cellular repair in the body, long-term cellular repair. So if you don't have these things, you really have to look at things like fasting and being careful of the damage that you do to your body. If you do have, especially homozygous, which means you have two of the good alleles correlated with longevity at certain SNPs, if you have a lot of those, you may have less concern. So for example, let me give an example from my life. When I was younger, I was a tobacco smoker. And I recall that when I was 21 years old or so, I tried to quit smoking tobacco. And one of my friends told me, hey Leo, I don't think that you should quit because, or he said, it's not such a concern. You're not going to die. I said, what do you mean you're not going to die? It's correlated to mortality, shorter lifespans. And he said, well, I have my aunt is 90 years old and she's a chain smoker. And I said, this is interesting. And then I thought about it. I said, well, you know what? My great-grandfather's alive. My grandfather's alive. My grandfather at that time was in his early 70s and still chain smoking. My American grandfather was still chain smoking without a filter on his cigarettes. And he still does to this day. He's in his 80s now. Chain smokes all day, filterless cigarettes. So I was like, maybe, you know what? Maybe I have a chance. Maybe I have some super genes that will just protect me. And so I continued smoking for a number of years. Later on, I discovered, and by the way, I already knew about genes at that time, but I was more interested in like ancestry and how populations moved around the world, and I was researching that more. A few years later, I learn about longevity genes, and I look at my longevity genes, and I only, out of all of the longevity genes, one of them, I have a homozygous form that is protective. Only one. The rest, I have either a couple of heterozygous ones, and then most of the really important ones, like FOXO, for example, I don't have the protective alleles. So I don't have these longevity genes that are associated with extremely long life. And had I known this earlier, I would have immediately stopped that smoking, because I would have said, well, your aunt is not me, and my great-grandfather is not me, and neither is my grandfather, because you see, every time that generation goes down, we get much less genes. So what happens when we mate is that, so for example, say me and Lucie have a child, at each SNP, the boy or the girl gets one allele from me and one from her. So they get mixed each time. So from my great-grandfather to me, they've been mixed so often that I may have lost both of his alleles. I may not have. I may have lost both of his alleles. So for example, he may have FOXO3A. But I certainly don't. So this is important to know. So basically that's about the longevity section. The methylation section, why I added that there was because I didn't know where else to put it with the other packages. It was in my long package, and I thought that I didn't want this one to be too short. So I thought that I put them together. And methylation is something that I'm certain that companies online do offer, like you pay like $20 or $10 and they'll analyze your genes for methylation. So they give you your polymorphisms at certain ones. And probably mine is a little bit more extensive than theirs. I haven't actually seen theirs, but I know I have some from research some SNPs from research that, see, a lot of these companies are not very frequently reading papers. And so a lot of them, they miss a lot of SNPs. Methylation is the most widely known impact of genes on our behavior other than the serotonin gene. Well, first, actually, the public doesn't know much about the serotonin. So there's a couple of serotonin transporter types, and academia has been heavily influenced by that. The public doesn't know about that. Academia has also been very influenced by methylation genes, but the public does know about this. So the MTHFR gene, for example, is very widely known. Now I have a couple of SNPs there that those programs don't do, but really the only difference between me and those $20, $30, or $10 programs is that my editorial again. So I put this into perspective of what I've seen, and in this case I give particular dietary recommendations. So I am a person that has problems with methylation myself. I've researched this. A lot of other people have. In fact, there are fitness gurus or health people that have made their entire career out of talking about methylation. Methylation, by the way, is one carbon metabolism. It's your body's ability to change molecules through a process called methylation that is important, for example, in a cycle in which methionine, the amino acid which is found in red meat, it gets converted eventually into homocysteine and then back into methionine. So it's really important because if you hyperhomocystinemia is really correlated with cardiovascular disease as well as a bunch of other things, and you don't want to stay at high homocysteine levels. But it also affects a lot of other things in your life. So for example, the COMT enzyme, which there are polymorphisms of that gene that really affect your ability to methylate dopamine, and they have proven effects on behavior because of that. So anyway, but you can find these things online. What I do though is I offer a detailed dietary recommendations of how to make the best of your methylation genes. And so together, basically this report offers you my detailed analysis of your chance of longevity by the way, I don't just list the SNPs. I describe what these genes, from almost all of them. I mean, there's a couple couple of sections of my report that I don't describe the genes because we don't really know what they do. We just know that they're correlated to something. But every time there's a gene that we know what it is, I describe what it is in colloquial language. So for example, my cognitive enhancement package, every single neurotransmitter is discussed and every single receptor is discussed, and I have a description of each one so that at the end of the day you understand. Sorry, anyway, my camera just shut down. I don't know why it's been shutting down a lot today, but the point is, that's what my first package is. I'll try to do one of these a week, so next time I'll probably do the cardiovascular section, which is much more comprehensive. It's like a 6-7 page report and very detailed. Actually, it may be longer than that. I hope you guys enjoyed this or learned something about it. And again, I'm not trying to, look, I'm not very commercial with this stuff. I'm not trying to pitch this stuff, but this comment made sense because I realized, you know, maybe people don't know, what do I do? I found out these genes, how does it impact my life? Well, it really impacts your life. If you don't know, if you turn out to have great longevity genes, you may not need to do all this kind of fasting, and you may not need to be as concerned about other things. And then there are specific sections, which we'll talk about later, like the autoimmune section, the cancer section, especially the cardiovascular section, where you can discover, oh wow, I'm really predisposed to stuff. And of course, in general, the younger you are, the more useful this is because you have a longer time course in which to prevent, you know, for example, cardiovascular disease. The younger you are, it's a lifetime illness. It increases the atherosclerosis and all the damage develops over your lifetime. The younger you are, when you realize, for example, that you have an ApoE4 variant, but there are many other things. You find out about your LDL receptor function, you find out about reverse cholesterol transport. If you find out about that early, you can do a lot of preventative measures. But even for someone my age or 40 years old, all of this stuff is very useful. And it gives you grounding to what you see in your family. Because as I said, through the generations, those genes don't all get passed down. So I am not my great-grandfather. So thank you guys so much for listening, and I'll see you next time.